Hello and welcome back to the Bridge the Gap podcast. We are so pleased to be back with a series of interviews that have been incredibly eye-opening for us. We wanted to come back to the podcast sharing conversations that are interesting, that generate curiosity, help you guys to understand, I suppose, what we're trying to do at Bridge the Gap, but also the crisis that's out there and how we can collaboratively come together to support. And
the first people we've interviewed are the amazing Positively Empowered Kids. Jackie and Claire have been part of that organisation since a similar amount of time as Jennifer and Nikki.
Yeah,
us.
They set up Positively Empowered Kids. They both have separate businesses and they came together to really shine a light on the fact that there is so much that needs to be done in terms of well-being and child well-being and mental health, and empowering the children and empowering the parents with this information in a really fun and accessible way. And we had a really interesting conversation with them, didn't we? There was lots of talk about connecting all of these dots together.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just working with the child, not just supporting the child, but connecting the dots between every part of that network around the child, and also the emotional curriculum, connecting the dots with school, bridging the gap between home and school, pun intended.
Yeah.
And difficult emotions, challenges that turn up for us as part of life, that's incredibly difficult, acceptance around that and moving through that, which at times is really hard to do.
Yeah, and I think I love hearing about the importance of that ecosystem that they support with, and being healthy body and mind in order to be able to learn, in order to be able to engage and to make friends and build positive relationships. It's so important. And we had a conversation about rewards and self-esteem, because that's what it's about, empowering children to feel good about themselves, to like themselves. So that was really interesting to talk about that in relation to conditional self-worth, authentic self-esteem and feeling good. It was a really great conversation.
An empowering one, hopefully.
Yeah, about being incredible.
Yeah, and that segues into the fact that they're doing a Positively Empowered Kids Festival this year, very soon in fact, 1st of July, which is based at Nottingham Racecourse, and it's all-day event, which is brilliant. Hopefully the sun will be shining.
Yeah, it will be, I'm sure.
Day is free.
Yeah, it's free to attend. All the links will be in this description box. Yeah, we'll not talk anymore. Here is the conversation that we had with Jackie and Claire from Positively Empowered Kids. We hope you enjoy. Woo! That's a great little intro. I'm sure they'll love that. Enjoy. Okay, here we are. So we are so thrilled to have Jackie and Claire from Positively Empowered Kids on the podcast. We have known each other for quite some time now. I'm trying to think when that might be.
2020.
For people who don't know you guys, you are really inspiring, because actually you've both got a why as to why you do what you do. And with Jackie, with the emotions toolkit, which is obviously so incredible, and everything you do with that, and with Claire with, you know, Positive Pants and all your brilliant stuff, and your book and everything. There's so much going on separately that meant that you found each other and decided that you wanted to bring that to the forefront of people's minds, I suppose. So do you want to start, I suppose, by sharing a little bit of why you care so much about this? Why did you create the things that you've created?
Absolutely. Well, for me, I am one of those children who struggle with their mental health from about the age of 10. That's when my journey took a bit of a turn because of the loss of my uncle. And that kind of was a point where I suppressed a lot of emotion and had no support. So nobody knew at all. And that kind of went into my teens, into my 20s, and really impacted my life massively with how that affected me. And being a mum with that in that state as well was challenging. Wasn't aware, had no self-awareness, no knowledge of how to bring myself into a place of balance. And it was really my 30s I was a yoga teacher by that time. I'd kind of started to go down the kind of alternative way of life, I suppose. And I taught yoga to children. And then it kind of, I did a whole life transformation really, and started to see what I needed and what I needed to do to heal. And long story short, I was able to start to put in place different ways to heal and to bring myself into a better state of mental health. And getting to that point was a realization that there was so much I needed to know when I was younger that then would have helped me. So therefore, that is why I do what I do and why I started things like the emotions toolkit, because if I'd have had that toolkit, that would have been a really powerful way for me to manage the anger, manage the sadness, all of those things that came up. It would have been a really big help to me at that time. So that's my why. And, you know, the passion comes from that place of knowing the difference it's made to me.
Yeah, and to understand why those emotions were there, right? Because we want to deal with them, but knowing why they're there. And
sure,
you know, grief is so complex, and when that's left unsupported and unexplored, it can be really tricky. And it's just incredible really that so many of us, I think every conversation we have, if I'd have known this,
yes,
if I'd have had this when I was a child, it's so important.
Absolutely. And if we can prevent, that's, you know, I think we're all trying to work towards that prevention. If you get in early, you empower kids. And that's why we've, you know, come together, because we both believe the same.
And Claire, your why did you decide to create Positive Pants?
The lovely Positive Pants. I mean, it's similar in a way, obviously a different set of circumstances. You know, I kind of, it's actually really interesting because I had a lot of trauma that happened in my very early years. So, you know, when I was a toddler, you know, different circumstances happened. And actually, I kind of grew up in a family where everything was good. You know, I had a good upbringing, you know, there was nothing sort of remarkable. But actually, when I reached my teens, suddenly this trauma all came out. So stuff that I thought I was dealing with or wasn't even on my radar suddenly appeared after a succession of other incidents. And I suppose it was kind of realizing that there was a real lack of awareness that would affect me. It all kind of, you know, got buried. It came out all at once, and you know, I had a really, really bad spell. I kind of reached, you know, the real sort of rock bottom. And that was when I started seeking help and getting support. And actually, at the time, it was quite difficult to find that support. Luckily, my dad worked for an organisation where, you know, his insurance covered some counselling for family members. So I was put into that as a sort of 16, 17-year-old. But other than that, I didn't have a clue that there were even options out there for me. And, you know, it's taken a lot of unraveling since then, even, you know, to kind of get where I am. But I think the thing was that awareness. And as soon as I became aware of the impact of what happened to me sort of previously, or my interpretation or perception of it, because, you know, everyone's experience is completely different. You know, as soon as I became aware, I could actually then sort of start taking responsibility for what my next steps were going to be. And I suppose Positive Pants was created, you know, it's kind of that ethos, that metaphor of kind of what can we do when we're feeling a bit low to make ourselves feel better. But if we don't know how we feel, we can't put things in place. So that was kind of really the driving force for me. And having my daughter, you know, when you become a parent, everything changes, doesn't it? It's no longer just about you.
Yes.
You know, it becomes about your child and your family, and actually, how is what I'm doing going to impact those around me? You know, how can I make sure that my child has this information, because I didn't have it. We know that we can't protect our children from these things happening, sadly. You know, we would all love that. And I do believe that is part of the human experience. The part of our growth is that we have to go through these challenges but actually we could go through them with that knowledge and power of the tools and the techniques, and that's kind of been my drive, hence, you know, why we've come together.
And such a natural partnership. It is. What you were saying really struck with me, Claire, around a lack of awareness that what happened to me would impact me. And I think that is massive, and I can relate to that so much. It's almost as well because the people around you aren't responding to it, so of course I should be okay. That personal lived experience of some sort really is a driving force, because when you recognize it, you're like,
yeah,
and everyone to know.
Definitely. And yeah, absolutely, that's what we want to share, everything. And I think for me, you know, you do it as a parent, you know, you will say to your child, it's going to be okay, you know, and you don't necessarily, if they're not feeling it in that moment, then necessarily revisit it, because you don't want to bring up those uncomfortable conversations sometimes, and like you say, you feel like you should be okay, and you know, why am I dwelling on it? But I think for me, what's really come up over, you know, since that time as a teenager, has been that my physical health has been very poor, because I've held on to this trauma. And now I have gone through, you know, quite a, you know, what's the word, an intense period of growth, of healing, you know, of really sort of acknowledging it and allowing that to come. You know, it brings up a lot of uncomfortable feelings, but I realized that I was actually holding on to that in my body, you know, because I hadn't released it. And actually, the more I release that, you know, the better I am. So, you know, it's important that we as parents feel comfortable having those conversations with our children. You know, we don't want to see them cry, we don't want them to be upset, we want to fix things, that's our nature, but actually it's let's empower them to fix themselves and to be aware.
I started to know what I needed to heal.
Yeah, it comes back to that self-awareness that we're talking about. It's the, I mean, as a mindfulness teacher, for me, it's that observational part of us that we can just start to notice and see what sensations, what feelings, what thoughts, you know, and then start to, you can move from that place once you kind of, it's like being awake to a new world of your mind, really. And being kind and compassionate is so important when we're going through these difficult times as well. And that's what, you know, a lot of our work, as is yours, is around. We've got to be kind to ourselves throughout this journey, because it can be quite tough at times.
Absolutely. Just to reflect on like a few of the things you've said, ladies, really, one thing that you were saying, Claire, around kind of that physical response, I can really relate to that as well. And you feel it, but you're not taught about that from a young age either. You're not taught that actually physically we feel emotion. And if we'd have had that preventative, like you were saying, Jackie, and proactive support when we were younger, to know that actually we feel every emotion physically in our body, and we hold on to it at times of stress or at times of anxiety, and it comes out in other ways, like we've all kind of experienced down the line. And I think there is something equally parallel with that, that's just this lack of kind of understanding of connecting all the dots together. And that's a large part of what we do at Bridge the Gap, and you guys do, is just that we are whole, that we're not separate. You know, I've got nurse friends that they say to me time and time again that the vast majority of people that are coming into their, you know, intensive care units or emergency settings or hospital wards, they are struggling physically because of trauma or because of mental health experiences that they've had and haven't processed. So there is just such a need to join all the dots together.
It was said to me once, it's through Sue, our other director. She said that at some point in time, she was a nurse, our bodies and our heads were kind of chopped off. So we would have, our bodies would go to general practice and our heads would go to psychiatry. But it needs to come together, like you're saying. It really, really does, because then we can start to understand more.
I always say it's really interesting. I was talking with my daughter the other day, and we were talking about body image and how, you know, I've been through a huge journey with that in terms of my mental health. and I'm in my mid-40s, and it's something that I still actively work on. I'm doing really well, and I think that's really important to acknowledge. But she was talking about what is one of the biggest things. I've been through many physical surgeries, big major operations, and she said, what's the thing you think that impacted your mental health the most, Mum? I said, when I broke my foot. And she said, what? So, and they, don't get me wrong, they were difficult in a different way, but for me, this was, my life was going really well, and one accident and I broke my foot. I couldn't walk to work in the morning, I couldn't walk home. I started to see a change in my body that felt uncomfortable for me because of my experiences, and it was really, really challenging for me, and it went on for about 15 weeks for my body to heal and for me to be able to get some of those things back. I remember going into the A&E department 3 weeks after I actually injured it, because, you know, the attention seeking label stays with you way after, you know, you're an adult. Oh, it'll be fine, it'll be nothing, don't want to cause a fuss. And nobody asked me, how might this impact your life? Have you got anybody at home who can get you around? How do you, you know, even if I didn't walk, even if I drove everywhere and I had to get to work, none of those questions were asked. And it wasn't because the nurse wasn't lovely. She was really lovely, but her job is to physical. Let's get a boot on, let's get an appointment at the clinic, all of those things. And actually that was so detrimental, and it was quite eye-opening for me, because we focus so much on, you know, my background and everything I've been through in my life that was really big and significant, that it's almost those little things that can take you completely off the rails, that if you haven't got the tools, if you haven't got the knowledge around how you feel, why you're feeling it, the thoughts, you haven't got safe people around you who have that knowledge as well to capture that and explore that, like Nikki had to with me. Jen, you're not quite yourself, let's talk about this.
No regulation.
No regulation. You can see how quickly someone's mental health can decline. And if we relate that to children, when they get injured and they can't play football for a period of time, or dance or gymnastics or whatever it might be, it might not be a big physical sport. There can be so many different barriers, can't there? But we can see without that knowledge how quickly someone's mental health can decline. And that's what we're trying to prevent with this knowledge, right?
And I think definitely, you know, particularly in those sort of circumstances, you know, and going back to, I suppose, our stories, really, you know, it is sometimes, you know, it's very reactionary, because, you know, it might be a child who's regularly struggling, and they might be the ones that, you know, that they get the support, or, you know, that they're triggered to go and get the support because they're actively showing the signs, and, you know, they need help. But there's a massive group of people in that middle ground that are just either people pleasing, or, you know, just kind of floating under the radar. I was that child, you know, I was never given any support, because on the surface it looked like everything was okay, you know, even when I had, you know, diagnosed with diabetes at 16 and everything, you know, again, the mental health implications of that were never mentioned. And actually there's a massive link with that, because obviously it's, you know, hormonal and all those different factors, but it's kind of never acknowledged. And I think that comes back to why our passion is what it is. It's that early intervention and prevention, because really, you know, we as adults, you go to the GP when there's something wrong, you buy something when you need something. What about actually stepping back and learning these things before you are in need? And that's a really hard thing for us as a culture to get our head around, but that is what we're kind of really passionate about.
I think you only have to relate it to going to school. You know, when you're a young child and you go and you start learning what letters are, you learn how to put words together, you learn what numbers are and how to add them up. It's exactly the same. It's crucial to our ability to be happy, to have a successful life, whatever that means. We need to be able to read and write. We also need to know how to manage those challenges we face in whatever shape or form in our lives. And for me, that is just as important, if not more important, than learning how to read, write and add up. It's a basic skill that we need to learn. And you know, there's so many adults out there that have no clue. You know, I was one of them. And this is what we need to start bringing into the curriculum. That's what we would like to see.
It does. Just like we were talking with some careers advisors the other day, things like practical skills, financial literacy. When do they start seeing in these systems? We won't begin to talk about government, I'm sure, but that these are so important, kind of more so than your academic subjects, many of them, like you say, Jackie. And
no, don't we? We know that emotional intelligence is a greater indicator of long-term outcomes than IQ. So this stuff absolutely matters, Jackie. I agree with you that this is actually the biggest piece of the puzzle, especially in the modern world.
It's fundamental. It needs to happen.
Well, you know, approach to learning and everything, you know, if you're you know, healthy mind, body, everything, you know, and you've got that healthy mindset, you go into your subjects delivering more and understanding more and coping more. I mean, I can't count the amount of lessons I went into where I was just so depressed that, you know, didn't matter what they were saying, didn't matter if it was my favorite subject, you know, my mind wasn't right, so I was not going to learn, you know. And we need to really help people to understand that there's enough out of us that see it and feel it and working towards that.
I think that we're all shouting from the same place, aren't we? We still believe, and like you say, it's not about not feeling those difficult feelings. They happen. They are, like you said, Claire, they're a massive part of life. These challenges show up, but it's knowing how to respond to them, how to sit with them. But this is information that people don't know they need to know until they need to know it. So this is the barrier. So this is, I suppose, a huge part of what you've tried to create with Positively Empowered Kids, is how do you make sure or try and raise awareness of this information matters when people don't know necessarily just how important it is.
And I think for us, you know, the way we do the work we do is to meet people where they are. So our festival, for example, which I'm sure we talk about a little bit more anyway, but you know, we, as you know, we run a festival every year in Nottingham. It's all about bringing amazing specialists together. You guys are obviously there, you know, so lots of service providers to actually show families what is out there to support their well-being. But within that well-being, it is the whole picture. It's your, you know, it's your you know, nutrition, it's your exercise, it's your mindset, it's, you know, all of those things. What things, actually activities are there out there that you enjoy doing? Because actually people might not come thinking, oh, I'm going to go to a festival that's all about well-being because I'm not in that space. But actually there's a real fun day where there's going to be bouncy castle and superheroes and workshops and a climbing wall and a stage with performers and sports to try, and, you know, arts and craft and dancing, you know. So they come with that, but actually what they come away with is so much bigger than that, because of, you know, the focus on all the stalls for us is about what is the reason behind all of these things. You know, why is it important that we find something that we really enjoy or that fulfills us or that boosts our confidence, for example.
It's so important that focus on that, what we view as society as well-being. What are we viewing it as? Because it's exactly what you said. What do I like? What do I enjoy? What do I believe in? What are my strengths? The culture of rewards in this society has become, we're saturated in rewards in school systems and at homes. And I think, you know, if we look at self-esteem and talking about recognizing and acknowledging emotions, we want children to recognize and acknowledge pride. So in order to do that, we don't want a really strong hormone like dopamine coming in and overshadowing that completely. And especially when they then enter, you know, social media and they're looking for the reward on there, which is a like, a comment, and how that impacts them if they're not getting that. Does that turn then, I'm not good enough because I'm not getting this extrinsic validation? And we want to surely try and nurture this intrinsic you know, self-esteem, this authentic self-esteem that comes from well-being. Do you see that in your work? That, I mean, I suppose, what are your views on rewards and how that impacts self-esteem?
For me, it's massively, you know, in terms of, I think it's that goal that, you know, when they go into schools, it's about trying to get that highest level, that highest mark, that reward, whatever it might be, and it becomes a conditional self-worth. You know, it's a condition on you actually feeling like you've achieved something. We've got to come more to the unconditional self-worth side, where we're actually looking at who we are as a person. What are our strengths? What are our values? What makes us incredible? Because every single one of us, we are incredible. You know, and go as far to say we're all made of stardust. It's that we are incredible. Hence the superhero theme, you know, that we kind of go with, because we are that. It's just uncovering that and seeing that part of us. Because if you know who you are, and you know you've got courage, and you know you persevere, and you know you're determined, if you put all those strengths to work within whatever you're doing and you fail, you give it a go, and you can learn, how can I improve, how can I get better? But if you don't have that knowledge, and I see this when I do mock interviews with year 11s or whatever, they can't tell me about themselves. They can tell me what they do, but they can't tell me who they are. And that is quite concerning, because it is all based on, you know, what you achieve. And I do think that's the wrong message that we're sending out.
And I think it brings up that kind of comparison of others as well, doesn't it? You know, for those students who aren't necessarily, you know, aren't gifted academically, they might be gifted in something else, but you're just constantly being put against each other. And like you say, you know, that's, you know, hugely detrimental, that kind of comparison to somebody else all the time. Of, you know, there's always going to be someone achieving different things. It doesn't mean it's better. You know, so actually, if we can feel confident that we're doing well in the areas that are actually important to us, let's work out what's important to us, rather than, oh, because everyone else is good at maths, I've got to be good at maths. It's not important to me. I'd rather be, you know, better at crafts, you know, whatever it might be for that child.
I won't go into the school system too much, because I'm sure we all have similar beliefs, but it comes down to the fact that we've got systems and schools that are telling children almost what they need to know, rather than letting them be curious and think and ask questions and find out what they need to know. You know, the curriculum is very much, you need to learn this, but what about everything else in the world, and who am I? And that authenticity that then allows you to live your life not fearful of other people's views on you, which is something that I, as I'm sure we all have, but huge barrier. Like, I don't think I was ever my true authentic self until probably my 30s, honestly. I just think that it was so hard. I wanted to people please. I wanted to be liked by everyone. And we can't be liked by everyone. It's not possible. But you know, when you're yourself and you're authentic, you find your people.
Precisely. So
I think that's half of the battle, isn't it? It's kind of exploring identity is something we're seeing more and more and more, that children do not have the space and capacity to do that when they're young. There's nobody supporting that and driving that, and all of that control is taken away from you. So naturally, because you're not used to making decisions, because you've been in systems that haven't allowed that, how can I even begin to explore who I am? Because I've not learned how to make decisions and to make choices in my life, because I've never been given those opportunities. So they're getting to the point of 16, possibly, suddenly having to make decisions about where they fit in the world, what they want to do as a career, where I want to be. And yet they don't know, because we haven't fostered that ability to make decisions and have control about those little things about where I fit in the world and who am I.
Absolutely. And even, you know, these days the business world is evolving and is changing, and they are needing more creative thinkers and innovators, and that, like you say, it's not being fostered in school, because it's kind of in kind of an old state, and we need to change that. We need to get those, because it's higher brain functioning as well. It helps us come into balance if we're being creative and thinking of solutions, and that helps with our mental health as well. If we know how to solve a Rubik's Cube, for example, that is, that problem solving mind is really good when it comes to thinking about what you're going to do to help yourself in this moment.
I think that's why we work with them. We work with the ecosystem of a child is how we describe it. So, it's not just the parents, as I'm sure you do. It's, it's the school, it's the communities, it's the businesses. We work in all of those different fields because, they all have an impact, and you're all at different stages in your life that can, be a role model. But really, all of this, it's a lot of pressure on parents, isn't it? Because actually, it does need to start at home. It does need to be sort of demonstrated by the parents, and then, then you're sort of putting pressure on yourselves. I found myself as a parent, I'm unpicking and working backwards to try and heal all the stuff, unlearn everything that I've spent all this time, learning. And it is only the past, 5 years really that I've truly stepped into my own and been confident with it. And I can demonstrate that to my daughter, but she's 12, so she's had 5 years of her life where I wasn't in that. That's, having that awareness. So, I mean, I think it's being kind to ourselves. I think, that's one thing for us, isn't it? The way we work together, the way we work with other people. It's having that kindness to ourselves, because we could all say we could do things differently, that we wish we'd had different things happen. But actually being kind to ourselves about the fact that we're making the best decisions that we can with what information we have at the time. The key to that is the more information of this sort of thing that is out there, that's when the impact, that's when the changes can happen. But like you say, if we don't know what we don't know.
It's just amazing. We're so aligned. I just feel it's just,
we know this.
Yes, so I know, Nikki, you'll probably want to mention something on problem solving before we move on to the festival, but it's so true. We have to be kind to ourselves, and we have to let go of this stick of guilt that we build as parents to beat ourselves with. When I specialised in emotional literacy, my eldest child was around 13. He'd had 13 years of a mum who was parenting in a very different way. And of course, I felt immense guilt over that, knowing what I know now about, how to nurture those neural pathways, I suppose, around emotional development, and how it's okay for them to feel, and how I need to hold a safe space. But like we said earlier on, that's all part of our process, and that's part of his. And we're all just adults functioning and learning. And I don't think we ever stop learning, especially when we work in the field that we do, where there's a lot of science behind it. And as science grows, we learn more, we know more. And I just think it's so important as parents that we just go exactly what you said, Claire. I say it all the time. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time, and you never make any decisions to add harm or distress to your child. You're doing it with love and compassion and heart, and that's all any of us really can do in life.
And actually, when you look back on it, everything kind of happened, I believe anyway, everything happens for a reason. And had I not have had those experiences, I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing now. So, and that's true for a lot of people that are in positions where they're trying to make a difference or a change. It is a passion. It's, for us, it's certainly our life purpose. It's, we say this time and time again, this work that we're doing has to happen. It just has to. There's no, with all the obstacles, and there's a lot of obstacles that come along, we just know it has to happen. And we've been placed together, we've had our experiences to shape this into what it is, and to be able to have that ripple effect. And I know you guys do the same. And so we can never regret, can we?
And I just feel really emotional listening to you talk, and I think it's so important that yes, it's a passion, and there are many barriers that we face, but it has to happen. We are where we are, and we can't ignore it anymore. Like, this is, let's listen, let's be curious as adults as well, and reflective, and think, oh, how do I help my child with this. Nikki, I know when we were talking about problem solving, your eyes were lighting up because you
well, it's funnily, as you were talking about barriers as well, that's more problem solving, isn't it? We all do it. It's a skill that we all need, that we problem solve, Jen and I, barriers, hurdles every single day, as I'm sure you guys will. And a large part of that skill comes from adulthood, not childhood, because again, we're not really given the opportunity to learn those skills around problem solving. But yeah, absolutely, it's linked to just everything self-esteem, everything growth mindset that you guys do preventatively and proactively. If we know how to learn to problem solve when we're little, we can move through difficult experiences when we're an adult, or at the time when we're little as well. But we as adults have really got to teach children how to do that. Even just as a parent, how do you know, if my daughter's come to me last night, actually, she's got this situation at school that's causing difficulties in the classroom, and she's having some concerns about. The space that I hold as a parent is not to try and fix that for her, but to give her the opportunity to explore how to problem solve that situation with empathy, with kindness, with holding that space. And I think as parents, we often find that really difficult, not to just go, oh, say this, do this, let's fix this, rather than allow that process to happen. But we can, and it's important to, with love and with kindness.
Peck, then, as I like to call you.
We do too.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful.
Well, we're the same. Bridge the Gap Child Mental Health CIC. You're Positively Empowered Kids CIC. So what are your dreams for Peck? And obviously you've got the festival, but what else is going on? Where are you based? How can parents benefit, I suppose, from Peck?
Well, we're based in Nottingham. We've just moved to Calverton in Nottingham. That's our new home that we've just arrived in. And for us, we do have a big vision. You know, we want to actually make an impact to young people globally eventually. We've got a huge vision. And I think one of the visions is really, you know, you've heard the saying, we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. And we've added on to flourish and thrive. Because if we can come together, many different people, to surround families, to support them, we're going to be able to make a bigger difference to them, and they're going to be able to find the information. So our bigger vision is to build out our kind of the starting block of the Family Empowerment Hub, which we started back in 2020, to be an online resource for families to access content, webinars, forums, all sorts of ideas we've got, which is, you know, the online version of what our festival is, which is, again, we started in Nottingham. We want to branch out. We want to have festivals everywhere to be able to create that space for families to come, because it gives families the opportunity to feel safe, to ask, to talk, to explore, to get tips, to get advice. I mean, I know you guys had great conversations last year with families that they're in a space where it is okay to say they're struggling. I know when we had CAMS there last year, they said that there are some of the deepest conversations they've ever had because families were there for that reason. So that's one of our big visions. You want to say the other one?
Gosh. Well, I suppose we all alluded to it earlier, and we don't often talk about this that much, do we? Because you know, it's kind of a bit of a legacy, I suppose. But is that kind of, you know, being able to, you know, change the education system, you know, to almost have our own system running, that brings in all these amazing people that are out there, to really inspire a child to truly be themselves. And to create their own path, not a path that's been predetermined for them. And I suppose that is our biggest vision. And I suppose one of our values are love, which won't come as a surprise. That comes into the kindness. Collaboration is another big one, because we know we can't do this alone. You know, that's why we have a great connection with you guys and with lots of other people, because, you know, on our own, that's why we came together. On our own, we can reach, you know, 10 children or whatever in a week, you know, but actually all together, we can reach hundreds and hundreds and thousands, and that's so important that those sort of values remain at the heart of everything we do, as well as play.
Yes,
Our,
I'll say that.
play's our other one, you know, because again, it's, you know, it is a serious topic, but actually when you're reaching people at the early intervention and prevention stage, you want it to be fun. You want them to actually understand this isn't scary to talk about. It isn't, you know, embarrassing to have to sort of, you know, learn how to do a breathing technique, for example, to help you. You know, we want them to embrace it. And so everything we do comes with that kind of fun element, as you will know from our festival and working with us, hopefully.
And you just really get involved with it. I love seeing you two with your superhero capes on, doing your walk, jumping up on the stage. You live and breathe it. You are a great example to those young people and the grown-ups who come, who lose that.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this yesterday, but play is what we need. Like, we biologically need play. And somewhere along the line, we lose that part of us, and bringing that back is so important. And we just think what you're doing is amazing. And we agree wholeheartedly with everything you're trying to do and what you say, and we can't do it on our own. And this is something Nikki and I have said so much, you know, the goal is to change the statistics around child mental health.
Yeah.
And they're really sad statistics, but there are so many wonderful people out there who are trying to help people to just feel that they're loved and that they matter and they can be who they are, and it's so important. So we end every podcast with a question I'm going to pose to each of you to answer, and that is, what would you want to say to a young person? Something that you wish that you'd have heard when you were younger. What would that be?
Well, for me, I've just literally put this on a presentation this afternoon. It's, we are all a superhero. It's the cape and mask that are the optional accessories. You need to stand in your power, get to know who you are, and recognize just how incredible you are.
I don't know if I can say mine, because I've literally, at the minute you said it, it's triggered, like I've literally just holding back tears right now. And I suppose, like, yeah, I'm thinking about me talking to my inner child and like what I would say. And it is just that you're good enough. It underpins so much for so many people, and that's holds us back.
And we are good enough. We're good enough as we are. We're all those superheroes. Guys, thank you so much. This is pure joy to talk to you, and I'll put all of your links below. Sending Claire the biggest squeeze.
I'll get a big hug in a minute.
All of your links below, links to the Positively Empowered Kids Festival. We'll add all of that detail so people please can go and check it out, and also that online hub as well, because there's so much information on there that parents can access that can really, you don't know what you might need until you see it and you engage with it. So go and have a good explore.
And I think just to add, with the festival, obviously it's the 1st of July, it's completely free for everybody to register. So you have to register your tickets, but it is free, and we've been working towards that for the past, since 2019 when we had our first festival, because we want to remove any barriers or blocks for families, you know, not being able to afford a ticket to get support with your well-being and mental health is not, you know, so it is completely free. So we'd love to see as many people as possible.
Oh, and I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. It'll be amazing, just like last year. Guys, I'm sending you lots and lots of love. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, and for collaborating and supporting us as well. It means a lot.
Always.